Excellent. All right. Thank you all for being here. Well, tonight, in person and online. Tonight's talk is going to be about neurofeedback and biofeedback. I'll give you a little overview on the two forms of what they can do. And then I was planning on going a little deeper into neurofeedback. If you want biofeedback, I can do that as well. But because the majority of our clients, probably 99% of them do mainly neurofeedback, I was planning on doing that one. And then showing you different cases on how it's helped and so forth. So what is the difference? What is neurofeedback and what is biofeedback? Neurofeedback is actually a form of biofeedback. So they all fall under the same guise. Biofeedback is the general canopy that you're going to be under. Then in that canopy, there are different things that you can train. So you can train brain waves, and that's called neurofeedback, or it's called EEG biofeedback. So EEG stands for electroencephalograph. So EEG biofeedback is the same, synonymous with neurofeedback. Good so far? Perfect. Then you're good? No? EEG biofeedback equals neurofeedback. Same thing. Exactly same. So that means you're using a feedback mechanism to train the brainwaves. Then you have the body systems and you can train it. So there are different systems that you can train. An example is temperature. So there are different forms of biofeedback that can change. You can train hand temperature, feet temperature, rectal temperature. These are all ways to actually make sure blood flow is going to the right area. So that would be called temperature biofeedback. Then we have galvanic skin response. A lot of big words. It just means how sweaty are your hands. So the sweat in your hands is a direct reflection of how stressed out you are emotionally. So your limbic or your emotional center becomes triggered, your hands will become sweaty. So if you're chronically emotionally triggered, you will actually have sweaty, and then chronic is dry. So dry is actually worse than sweaty. Sweaty is still adaptive. Dry is really bad. You don't want that because that's chronically emotional stress. Then we also have heart rate. So we can
audio went out, this FYI.
Lost the video.
The guy just said that. FYI, the video from Mom. He said audio. You lost the whole video.
And now you're going to see this video. Look at behind it. Papa, do you want to see mine?
Look at her video.
Look, you see that monster? It's a growling monster. He's trying to chase. And see the way.
Like body language, very calm, very collected. That's not Lloyd.
Volume.
That's in.
All right, so we'll go back to that. Sorry for everybody online, I was muted. All right, so back to where we were. Heart rate variability is an indication of how well you will deal with disease and dysfunction. The higher it is, which means the higher the fluctuation between the top and the bottom, the longer you will live. You can look up HRV. There's certain things called heart math. It's a whole study on this. We have the gold standard of training, though, for heart rate variability, which is literally making sure that when you breathe in, your heart rate speeds up, and you breathe out, your heart rate goes down. So we actually measure your respiration and correlate it to your heart rate. And with that, we know that you're actually doing it correctly, and that's how we train. So that is one way to help people. If they can't control their body, it's one way to help people with anxiety. It's to help them with depression, to help them with stress management. It's to actually learn how to control their heart rate and speed it up and down. The better you can do this, the quicker you will relax. Medical doctors use another way of doing this. They'll give you what's called a beta blocker. So they'll give you a drug that won't let your heart speed up to deal with anxiety. Or you can learn to control it yourself naturally, and you'll have the same outcome and no side effects. Just as a side note, the cardinal sign of somebody who's going to have a heart attack is their heart beats at the exact same rate, no matter if they breathe in or breathe out. So that, I want you to understand, is crazy, because what do they do when they give you a pacemaker? Make your heart beat at the exact same rate, no matter what. So just FYI, your body is fluid and adaptable. It should speed up and slow down. It should have rhythms. If it doesn't, we have a problem. Indications of disease is not changing. If you change and are adapting, you're healthy. If you're staying stagnant, we have a problem. Heart rate stays the same, we got a problem. Blood pressure doesn't go up and down, we got a problem. Temperature doesn't go up and down, we got a problem. Hormone levels don't fluctuate, we got a problem. Brain waves don't change, we got a problem. So change is actually telling me you're healthy. If you don't change, it tells me you're sick. We doing good so far? Perfect. So we did that. Respiration rate is another one we can train. So if you see me looking to the side, it's because I actually have my cheat sheet over there. So we have stress response evaluation ideals, and these are everything that we can actually measure. So my cheat sheet is what's in front of the vibe board. And in front of the vibe board, it literally tells you what normal is for each of the actual things that we can train. So respiration rate is how many times you breathe per minute. You want to be between 6 and 12. Well, what happens when we stress out? Do we breathe more or less? More, so we hyperventilate. So that will actually turn on stress. And that's an indication. So these are all indications that we can look at. How sweaty are our hands? How warm and cold are our hands? What's our brainwave doing? How fast and slow is our heart rate? What's our average heart rate? How tight are our muscles is all indications, and that's EE or EMG, electromyography. And that will tell me how well you can actually control your muscles. If you are stressed out, the first area that will change for you is actually your traps. And it's a defense posture. You'll actually pull your shoulders up. And when you pull your shoulders up, it actually tells you, it actually tells your brain to go into stress. So it's actually a subconscious relaxation or a subconscious stress technique or stress management. So when you're stressed out, you go up, which actually stimulates the stress nerves called the sympathetic chain in your neck, which turns on blood pressure to go up higher into the brain, but will shunt blood away from the frontal lobe. So that means take blood away from you. The last form, so we have muscles, we can actually train you to control your muscles. You can actually learn to relax them and move them. We don't use that so much because usually when we just train the motor cortex, we can get it better. If you have severe scoliosis, we can actually train the musculature in the spine with adjusting and then have you actually move and learn how to activate it and actually pull it back. But we find the adjustment works really, really well when we hit specific segments with a low impulse and then repeatedly do that and then train you to actually activate it. And you can actually learn how to activate the muscle by putting probes on, and it will actually learn how to facilitate or turn on that muscle. The last one is a real interesting one. It's not on there, and it's called PIR, or it's blood flow to the brain. Passive infrared, or HEG is the other form of it. And what we do is PIR and HEG are just different frequencies. And what they do is they measure the amount of blood going in the brain. So it's PIR is infrared, passive infrared. It actually measures the infrared change, so how fast the blood is going to your brain. So what is the stress response when you're stressed out? Less blood to the frontal lobe. Less blood to the frontal lobe means lower temperature. Lower temperature tells me you're in a protective state. We've had people from colleagues come in and they're as low as 50 degrees. That means they have literally no or almost no blood flow going to your frontal lobe. It should be at 94. 92 to 94 is a good region. The lower that is, the worse it is. As a side note, when we adjust you, there's actually been MRI studies showing increased blood flow to the frontal lobe. So increased blood flow, you're relaxing, and you can turn off stress. Do you have any questions on the different forms of biofeedback? The last one is neuro or EEG biofeedback or neurofeedback. And that's the one I'm going to go into and elaborate more on. So with neurofeedback, what we're doing is we're actually training the brain in real time. So we actually are measuring the brain waves, and you are being responded to or given stimulus in real time for what's happening. So you're actually learning as you do the training. So every time you sit down and close your eyes and hear the music turn on and off and the lights, that's actually training the actual brain for that 15 to 20 minutes that you do it. So if you leave and you're like, I'm so tired, but I didn't do anything. No, you did a ton of work, because what you're actually doing is you are reconnecting or making new connections to actual neurons and making them fire at a certain rate. So what does that mean? It means we're actually training the mitochondria. If you don't know what that is, those are the little energy cells in the nerves. And you're training them to make energy at a rate that will correlate. So we're training them to slow down or speed up. And the speed at which they do that will actually help how you perceive the world. So what are the different brain waves? I'm going to go over this quick because I did do it last time. But if you are new, we have posters in the office where you can look at the brain waves or other talks. The last talk we did is on YouTube and both on Facebook as well. And it goes over the brain waves in more detail. So the brainwave of sleep is delta. That is 1 to 3 hertz. That's deep sleep, and that's when you heal your body. Brainwave of subconscious light sleep is theta. Brainwave of wakefulness, as well as, or did I say what theta was? Theta 3.5 to 8 hertz. The brainwave of wakefulness energy is going to be alpha. So that is 8 to 12 hertz. That's also memory. Then between alpha and beta is a brainwave called SMR. SMR is sensory motor rhythm. It's only found in the middle part of the head, and it's how you control muscles. It's how you make movements happen, and then the movements are coordinated by the cerebellum. That one is 13 to 15 hertz. And then beta is going to be your, or SMR is, I'm sorry, isn't 13, it's 12 to 15. And then beta is 13 to 38. Then you also have a higher frequency, and depending on who you talk to, this one is either memory or euphoric state, and that is your, it dropped out of my brain. Gamma, yeah, that's right. That's your gamma. So that one, depending on the researcher, is 38 to 42 or 38 to 200. And as you can see, there's varying degrees. You'd be like, but doc, I looked it up and the journal said it was 7.81 and not 8. That's the researcher's opinion. I'm just going on the researcher I like, okay? So the frequencies are 99% the same through all the researchers, but there is slight variations. So don't get stuck on the variations. Understand the concept that each one of these does a specific thing. So the purpose of neurofeedback is to actually measure the brainwave in real time. So what happens is we have computer, we have brain, we have a lead going to the brain, measuring in real time, we get the EEG. The EEG will then measure the frequencies and the ratios that we want. So let's say a lot of people do O1, or the back of the brain training. That's subconscious. That's where racing thoughts come, anxiety, self-medicating behavior, or stress tolerance, that brain chatter that never shuts up. We want the ratio of theta over beta to be at basically a 2-to-1 ratio. That means double the amount of theta to beta. Or we want the ratio to be 1.8 to 2.2 if you want to be number oriented. 2 is a good number because 2-to-1 ratio is where you want. So what happens here is we'll read the brain and the frequency will be measured. And then in real time, the computer will split those frequencies up and tell you how much beta you have, how much theta you have, calculate it, and then it will literally tell you if you're going in the right direction. When you're going in the right direction, that's when all the fun stuff starts happening. When you're going in the wrong direction, that's when we force you to start learning. Now, this is using 2 kinds of training. It's using classical conditioning as well as operant conditioning. I don't have the time to go into this, but basically it's teaching you through reflexes as well as learning to make the brain do the right thing. So what does that look like? What that looks like in real time is person comes in, and let's say they're suffering from anxiety. They've tried anxiety meds and it hasn't worked. And it comes out that their anxiety is coming from a subconscious issue that they haven't processed through. What will happen then is we want to push up the slow brainwave and push down the fast brainwave. That means we want to push up theta and push down beta. So when you have training, you go, well, what's my theta beta ratio? That's telling us what those are doing. For our visual people, that's going to be T divided by B. We want theta to go up and beta to go down. The optimal is 1.8 to 2.2. So you come in, and let's say that's at 0.9. That means you have way too much fast brainwave. So what we want to do is push up the slow one. So we measure in real time, and when you make more of the slow and less of the fast, a reward is triggered. The reward is music. Music will turn on, and you guys have all experienced this. But then the music turns off. That's when your brain does the opposite to what we want it to do. So we're actually reinforcing it like a carrot and giving it the carrot when it does the good thing. When it does the good thing, we give it music. When it doesn't do the right thing, we take the music away. But then what we do is we help it do it at a faster rate by using brain driving. That means we use other stimuli to actually push you or pull you to do it at a faster rate. Now, how do people learn? They learn by seeing, they learn by hearing, or they learn by touching. So we use those stimuli to actually make you respond. So how do we use seeing? We actually have glasses and they flicker. And the rate at which they flicker at will actually push up the frequency we want. So in the back of the brain, we have the glasses flicker at 4 hertz. If remember, what is theta? 3.5 to 8. So 4 is right in the bottom end. When you push 4 hertz, the research has shown it will actually push up theta and suppress or push down beta. So what does that mean? When you don't make the frequency correctly, you're making too much fast and we want it to slow down, we turn the glasses on. And that turns on automatically. On the other hand, when you're doing what's right, we actually push you to do it faster by using kinesthetic stimuli. So you know those probes that we put on your wrists or on your knees? Those are using kinesthetic or movement stimuli to make you do it faster. So when the music turns on, you'll also hear a click, and that's when that microcurrent goes in and actually stimulates the meridian. So let's say we're doing the back of the brain again. We usually use heart meridian, and it will actually stimulate the heart to make a mild dopamine rush, and your body says, ooh, I like this. How do I do it more? Not enough where you get happy and high, but enough where your body starts craving it. So what we're using is your body's addiction to dopamine to actually teach it that if it does this, it'll get more. That makes sense? So it does more slow brainwave, gets more happy feeling. Does less slow brainwave, gets more light to force it to slow down to get more happy feeling. So we pull it with the glasses, or no, we push it with the glasses and we pull it with the frequency. So if it's doing what's wrong, we make it do what's right. And if it's doing what's right, we make it do it right quicker. This is why with brain driving, the average change in a non-inflamed brain can happen roughly 90% quicker than standard neurofeedback. We also, though, because we integrate the adjustment, have the silver bullet. So if you talk to any neurofeedback or biofeedback people, they go, so you're telling me that if you physically adjust the spine, it will literally reset the brain? Yes. That's that poster that I show you when I go over day 1. But it literally breaks the stress pattern and changes the brain waves. There is nothing else that does that. And it does it so quickly that it resets your modal network or how you experience the world, thus changing how you are stressed out. So that's why the number one side effect of the adjustment is actually improved mental health. And this is through a study of over 36,000 people, one of the largest studies in the world, showing through questionnaires. It's called SF36. It's a questionnaire telling you about how they interpret the world. That is the number one side effect, is improved mental health through the adjustment. So that's why I paired it with the neurofeedback, is because the adjustment is so powerful. Then we learn that it makes new connections. And then when you pair it with the new neurofeedback, what you can do is make those connections, those new connections, pattern the right way. And this is why we get quicker results. This is why you feel the changes very quickly, is that we're actually rewiring your brain to what it needs to be. We're taking you out of stress and wiring you into relaxation. The other thing that I missed to tell you is that when you're doing the neuro as well, you may hear a static noise. That's called a harmonic. That's embedded in the machinery. And it's a way to force you to actually produce more of the frequency we're going after. So the doctor whose protocol I use is Dr. Paul Swingle, and he's out of Canada. And he's been doing neurofeedback, and his work has been used, he's been doing it for the last 40 years. Now he's retired and his daughter has taken over, but his work, literally each one of those areas where I say this number has to be above or below that, is a couple thousand people and what worked and what didn't work. So why we're different as well is I'm using what's called clinical data, or a clinical database. Other practices will do neurofeedback and they don't use clinical databases. What they use is a generalized, it's called a Q-score. So it tells you what's the average, and if you are more than 2 to 3 standard deviations from the average, then you have a problem. The problem with that is that, like during COVID, how many people were stressed out? Everybody. So that means the average was stress. The same thing has happened in the US. The average population is obese, So now you have to be grossly obese to be considered obese. With a clinical database, it's what makes the problem go away. It's not based on an average, because you can miss a lot of different forms and problems when you don't actually look at a clinical database. Examples are, a lot of my colleagues, when I talk to them, are not aware that there are actually 3 different forms of ADD. And they show up as different areas. So an example is there's alpha ADD. That's in the front. That ADD will predispose you, if it gets really bad, to fibromyalgia, chronic pain, and sleep issues. When you have that form of ADD, you get distracted, but your way of coping is actually talking. There's another form of ADD called under stress or under task ADD. This form of ADD is the one that I would love to help us figure out how to help more people with, because in jails, 95% of all people that are in jail have this form of ADD called under task ADD. And how it works is when you try, your brain shuts off. So think about that. The harder you work, the brain shuts off more. So what are you going to do? You can't learn, so you're going to have to go to crime or something to learn how to actually get enough money to live. That's scary, isn't it? And then you have common ADD, which is most people are aware of, where you get distracted easily and so forth. But there are different forms, and most people aren't aware of that. And unless you test for it and are looking for exact things, you don't know. When you know what you're looking for clinically, and I'm lucky enough to stand on, the shoulders of Dr. Swingle, where I know what I'm looking for. And then when you match it and pair it with the chiropractic care, you get miraculous results. You get changes that take literally hundreds of visits in tens of visits. Do we have any questions about how the neurofeedback works? Go ahead.
So the nodes on the ears and the back of the head are giving the computer system information about what my brain is doing. Then the glasses and the sound and this is giving my brain information about what to do differently. So it's that loop.
Correct. So the statement was the nodes on the ears, those are the grounds, and the 0, and the probe on the head, wherever it's placed, is actually reading the brain waves. And then the feedback is coming in the form of music, light, and feeling through texture, through sensation. And it's actually a feedback loop saying, yes, do that more. Yes, do that more. Yes, do that more.
And if I can't feel it, that's okay.
If you can't feel the probes, that's okay, because your brain is perceiving it. Just like you can't feel radio waves, but they're going around us at all times. Some people can, and they're really sensitive, and then they can't live in cities. But yes, so yes, it's working, and we know how well it's working based on how you're progressing. So as you train and the brainwaves are improving, it's your brain learning to actually make the right pattern. That's what's different, is when we do that, you actually learn the new pattern, and when you're there, you own it. So it doesn't go away. It's something you own. The only way it'll go away is if you have a major head injury or you have some major trauma in your life. If you don't have major, it stays. Then all you have to do is, give it a little pick me up once or twice a year just to keep it going good, just like a car would, where you want to make sure everything's in good running order. So that's where I love taking care of people when they don't have any symptoms, because now we can go, well, what kind of peak training do you want? Increase IQ? Do you want to be a better artist? Do you want to be better with cognitive abilities, not get anxiety? You want to be better at sports? It's just whatever you want to achieve. As a byproduct of this training, we'll see everything from, we had a little girl who had leukemia as well as severe social anxiety disorder, and she was young, so her brain was still growing. She was 8, and we watched it all go away in 3 months. And she had those blood tests for a decade, or not decades, for about 4 or 5 years showing the problems. So once the brain gets better, the body can heal itself. Did I say we cure cancer? No. We fixed the brain, and the brain healed the body. Does that make sense? Any other questions?
Can you demonstrate the breathing technique you mentioned earlier?
So the breathing, the respiratory breathing, that's diaphragmatic breathing. So diaphragmatic breathing, if you can't control it, and you can tell by, if you feel your pulse, if you feel it speed up when you breathe in and speed out when you breathe down, or you breathe out, you're doing it right. If you feel this hit the same, we may need to actually do some neurofeedback or biofeedback. So how it works is, what you want to do is when you breathe in for 4, hold for 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then breathe out for 8. At the end, you want to breathe hard. That'll actually stimulate the vagus nerve. So in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8, and up at the very end. And that diaphragm will push up, stimulate the vagus nerve, and give you that little oomph of vagal stimulation. Does that make sense? And it's all through the tummy. So the goal is hold your chest, one hand on your chest, one hand on your tummy, and when you breathe in, and when you breathe out, so I didn't do the right pattern, but you see what I'm doing? We do not want to see this. We only want to see just tummy moving. People who are stressed have a high time because they can only chest breathe, which means they're breathing through their shoulders. And that's why they have chronic neck. Making sense? Excellent. So, any other questions? We're doing good? Perfect. So I'm going to thank you all for being here. If you have any questions, please ask. My hours between 3:30 and 4:30 daily are set aside for blocks when you have questions about what's going on. I want to know more. That's when we schedule it. We'll schedule it in 15-minute blocks to go over stuff. And I can go through a lot of stuff in 15 minutes. So I thank you for being here. And if anything came to mind, well, I need help with this or my friend needs that, know we're here for you people, or for our family and our community. And we'd love to test them so they know. Doesn't mean they need to get care. Just test them so they know what's going on. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.